Radio Free Skaro.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Radio Free Skaro, episode number 760. I am Stephen in Edmonton.
Warren in Vancouver.
And Chris in Edmonton.
Today on the show, hey, let's talk about missing episodes, because we haven't done that in a while. Unfortunately, there's a podcast that does nothing but. It's called Doctor Who, the Missing Episodes Podcast. And Tim and Paul from said podcast pop along later in this episode to talk about the podcast, about missing episodes in general. It's a great podcast, by the way. They've had several guests on and stuff, and really do like deep dives into not only, they review the episodes and stuff, but also like where did it go and what's the history of the broadcast of these things, to sort of like try and decipher where it might have wound up and where it did wind up, which of course is at the bottom of a pit in the BBC
with a
garbage dump.
Right next to the ET cartridges that were dumped unceremoniously in 1982 in California desert.
Yeah, like, did anybody check that out? Yeah, maybe there was some
there's a whole documentary about it on Netflix.
No, I mean, like, maybe there was some like Doctor Who episodes in there as well. Like, maybe we flew out to New Mexico and like, let's dump all the season 3 out there. Come on, just dump it.
The entire movie, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, is a documentary about getting rid of missing episodes.
I think
you
it
don't
is.
see it, but in the background, they're taking 1-inch tapes into the alien ship.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Do is actually code for "we have the missing episodes."
Is it?
Think about it, people. Think about it.
Think about it. Make a
Wake
little
up,
mound.
sheep.
Stupid and ridiculous.
Yeah.
I just made it up, but it still makes more sense than QAnon. So there you go.
Very true. So that's happening. Speaking of missing, this is perhaps an announcement that has been a long time coming, sadly. But there is also a sense of relief as well. Gallifrey 1, 2021 has been postponed till 2022. Everything, Comic-Con, basically you name an event, it has been postponed or affected by this global pandemic that we're going through. And alas, with California being in a state, and also, with the fact that many of the guests come from the UK and stuff, and some of them are older, perhaps the ones who worked on the classic series and such. I mean, it's just that it was not a safe space for to hold a convention in 2021. So it has been postponed. If you bought tickets, they will transfer to next year, to the next year. I say next year, 2022 convention. Also, your hotel reservation, if you manage to get one of those, that also, amazingly, thanks to the LAX Marriott,
specifically.
Yeah, transfers over to 2022 as well. What we don't know is what dates it'll be in 2022, because, hey, the Super Bowl's coming to Los Angeles in that massive, giant crash spaceship of a stadium that they're building right now. And so that's happening around like February, early February-ish. And that will tie up all the hotels. So it's potentially going to be February 18th to 20th or March 4th to 6th in 2022.
Whatever they choose.
We'll be there. Yeah. So, we kind of knew this was coming. I mean, I was getting like flight alerts saying, "Hey, wow, your flight to LA is really, really cheap right now. You should book." And I go, "Shut up,
teasing app!
Shut up, you stupid app! Can't even leave the country right now."
I put it like this off air. I said, "I'm just glad the choice has been taken out of my hands."
Yeah, the thing that, I think it was the Los Angeles County basically saying that, events of a large scale are not to be held here. So that was kind of what did it in. If a convention sort of goes, hey, we're going to cancel, and the hotel isn't saying, oh, no, you can't get out of the contract, then that's very pricey and stuff. So Los Angeles
I've
County
gotten emails, not lately, but it lasted a while, for the Star Trek thing, which is supposed to happen in the summer, which is now supposedly happening in December. I'm like, God, good luck, guys. It's not happening in December. I think you're dealing with Vegas hotels, and that's why you're waiting. But eventually, they're going to have to buckle on that one.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's September now. It's a long ways away. Is February, so it hasn't quite set in. I imagine once we're through like 5 months of winter in this part of the world, it'll sort of go, oh right, we used to go to LA for like 3 days in February, and that sort of like was a nice like kickoff to spring in a way. Like maybe it'll start getting warmer when we get back, but now we won't have that. So that alone is going to be sad. But I imagine once we get close to actual February, it'll be like, there's a thing we used to do around this time for the past like 11 years, and we're not doing that this year, and it's kind of sad.
That'd be what, 12?
What do you do? Thanks for nothing, COVID.
Yeah. That would have been our 12th, and it will be our 12th.
No. It would have been our 13th.
I lose track every year.
2009 was the first one, so
yeah.
2010 was the second, so 2020 was our 12th.
Wow. Which also happened this year, for what it's worth.
It did.
I know it's hard to remember that not only did Doctor Who air in this calendar year, but also we had a Gallifrey 1, and it was also in the year 2020. Before
it was full on, and it was one of the last things that we got to do.
We had a big snowstorm in Vancouver in late February, and we've all just forgotten because it feels like it was 16 years ago.
It was madness. So there we go. Gallifrey 1, 32nd to midnight. It'll still be the 32nd Gallifrey 1, and it'll be in 2022. So everything just gets postponed a year, essentially. That's why it's not canceled. We're not losing the 32nd Gallifrey 1.
Somebody better build a paradox machine. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, well, also the people who got tickets will get a special little commemorative thing for 2021 Gallifrey 1 lapel pin in honor of the year without Galley. So that's a little thing to look forward to as well. So hopefully science will have saved us all from our ignorance and stupidity and complacency and laziness, and we can have a vaccine in the next 12 to 16 months, and then we can gather in Los Angeles in 2022 and party like we have never partied before, perhaps.
Under a Biden administration. Oh, getting political.
Yes, that's right, because I've been saying there's a Stacey Abrams administration coming in 2023. Somehow! Who knows how? I've just seen the future, and it's very strange.
Mandatory, screen-accurate Fourth Doctor scarves.
I would be on board with that platform.
Just as a side thing, did you listen to Stacey Abrams on David Tennant's podcast?
I have not, no. Was it good?
Very good, yeah. Very, very good.
No, I'm 3 episodes behind because he's talked to Dame Judi Dench and George Takei, and I have not listened to any of those episodes yet. So yeah. Anyway, Gallifrey 1 postponed. So find other things to do in February. Best of luck to you.
Well, just like we've had to find other things to do since March as well.
That's true, and it's
pretty much this year and indeed decades, Anthem.
Yeah, well, here, I mean, it's
ramp up those streaming service subscriptions and whatnot.
Well, because like hockey season is now, like the NHL came back after a massive pause, and like the playoffs are now, and it's getting close to the end of said playoffs. They will wrap up by the end of September, which is usually when the NHL season proper begins, and so October and November will be hockeyless. So what's coming down the pipe here is a 2 to 3 months of no hockey, when in Canada there's nothing to do but go play hockey because the weather's bad and you should feel bad. And so
or watch hockey for those of us who can't skate.
Or watch hockey as well. So either way, it's like I'm looking at the next 2 to 3 months as like this is a dark time. I am like lining up. Let's see. I'm thinking let's play Skyrim again. What else? I've got a couple videos that I want to work on. Like there's some stuff that I need to do to sort of like just fill my head.
You talking old Skyrim or Skyrim Online?
I don't do Skyrim. I don't know what that is. So probably just old-fashioned Skyrim. Yeah.
You'll have a chance to polish your Rose 10 fic.
I don't actually do that. I might do Lego versions, but no, there's no Lego 10 Doctor Who, so that won't happen
Which I
either.
am shocked by, frankly.
You'll just have to do custom minifigs.
Well, I tell you what, thankfully, speaking of Lego, they are on October 1st, oddly enough, as if timed to minimize my franticness. They are releasing this amazing-looking Mos Eisley Cantina set of like 3,500 pieces, 21 minifigs. Like it's a proper, actual, to-scale Cantina set, as opposed to like the little mini ones they've put out over the years. So yeah, I'm totally getting that. I'm totally buying that, and so that'll be a couple days. That'll fill me a couple days.
How many of the Cantina guys they had in there?
What? And so yeah, I haven't looked at that closely, but I know that one of the guys who are in that is like the little wolf man.
So it was cut out, I think.
Yeah. So he's the original. He's not like one of those like pipe smoking CG aliens that they shoehorned in the special edition. No, he's proper original. Let's look around
have the two ladies
the
with
prop store.
The bad wig dreads, do they? Who are smoking pipes, actually, as I recall. There's two ladies that they cut to. I think they might not be in there.
No, probably not. But I mean, the Wolfman is, and that's the big one, because that was the one that they just sort of like raided a prop store to try and fill out the Cantina
Hammerhead there?
sequence.
Hammerhead better be there.
Oh, definitely Hammerhead's got to be there. I think Snaggletooth is. Everyone's there.
Hammerhead had his own action figure, so I mean,
I know, which baffled me as a child. I'm like, what is this thing?
Well, he's a Cantina guy. That's all.
I know that. But.
Yeah, he's probably not called Hammerhead, which is unfortunate because they we have to build a backstory and why he got there in the first place, and his name is actually.
I love how they do that.
Yeah.
And yet Gonk is canon.
Gonk is canon.
The power droid.
Yeah. Where one of my favorite things is that Kenner, who made the toys, just looked at like, well, what are these? We don't know who these guys are. This guy, call him Hammerhead. He's got a hammer for head. This guy's got a bit of a tooth. Call him Snaggletooth. What about this guy? Pruned face. That's who that guy is.
Great.
Yeah, it's awesome. So there. What did we talk about? We talked about lockdown and pandemics and Gallifrey 1 and Lego.
Next up is New York Comic-Con.
New York Comic-Con.
Such as it is.
There's the New York Comic-Con panel because New York Comic-Con is going virtual, which Galley's not. The Galley's not. It says as of now they're not doing it. You cannot replace the Gallifrey 1 ethos on an online convention. It's just it's impossible. Like I'm thinking
the panels are
impossible.
great, but they're one part of a larger whole.
Very large, yeah, very much so. So I just can't see how you would do that, but because there's a separate, big conventions like New York Comic Con. They're having a Doctor Who panel with Jodie Whittaker and Amanda Gill talking not about the upcoming season, which apparently is getting ready to shoot. So says a couple of media outlets, including the Radio Times. So that's why I'm quoting it in this podcast and not just sort of quoting the Mirror or something like that. But they this panel though, which is taking place on October 7th or something. I don't have the date in front of me. With those two talking about the past two seasons. So they're not actually even talking about the current series because that's kind of par for the course. They never talk about it. But these conventions are sort of like more velvet rope conventions. It's more of a media convention. Here are the actors and the stars, and here you are on the other side of the rope, and never shall the two meet. Whereas Gallifrey 1, even though you never really see your big name actors at the convention in the lobby afterwards, you often do see a lot of the other guests, and a lot of them just sort of dive in and have fun. And that's the part of the Gallifrey 1 experience that you just can't sort of replicate, So
it's seems kind of weird not to have Chibnall or any of the exec team there.
Well, I don't know.
I mean, given the point of it is like a retrospecticus of the last couple series. I mean, you don't need him.
They don't have to fly him in, I guess. So.
Well, if it's all virtual, then
that's what I mean.
Yeah.
But
I feel like showrunners are there to plug new stuff as opposed to talk about old stuff. I don't know,
or deny things.
Yeah, that's
maybe. Or I mean, it'd still be nice to have. No disrespect to Whittaker or Gill, but it'd be nice to have other non-actor perspectives, whether they had Pete McTighe or Vinay Patel or Mallory Blackman or Chibnall or somebody from like the writers or some of the directors or
But usually with SDCC and NYCC, it's going to be the showrunner or nobody else. That's just how they do these things.
Yep.
I'm not saying they should, but that is how it usually works out because it is all a big PR stunt at the end of the day.
Yeah. It'll be fun, though.
It's a marketing tool.
Yeah, I'll check it out. It's online. I think it's the October 7th. I want to say October 7th is when it was, but anyway, it's happening that weekend anyway in October.
This past week was also Star Trek Day, and I saw last night on YouTube there's a bunch of the so-called panels, which are like 20 minutes in length at best.
They're on trial. Panels on trial.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of the panels on YouTube as well, so I've earmarked a few of those to sit and watch. I watched half the Discovery one last night, and it's got like one actor and then Kurtzman and the other showrunner, or one of the other showrunners.
You said the magic words for Steven.
Yeah. Alex Kurtzman. No, I don't agree with Alex Kurtzman's vision of Star Trek. I didn't know what he actually did on the show until I realized, that he's behind Discovery and he's behind Picard, which started out okay, but sort of veered off course. And I looked, what else did he do? Oh, he did the 2 Star Trek movies, which I hate. And he didn't do the 3rd one, which I didn't mind. And I thought, I don't need to hear from him or watch anything that he has to do with Star Trek. I don't
disagree with anything you said, but I don't mind Discovery.
Yeah, I know you don't. I'm off because I jumped off. I jumped off after season 1. I thought this is it. This is it for me. I don't feel like watching it anymore. And so you could do that too. You can do that too when it comes to shows. You don't have to hate watch them in the hopes that it'll get better. You can.
I'm hate watching, which I'm not.
I did that with Game of Thrones. Watched the first 2 seasons. I'm like, I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm perilously close to doing that with Westworld. I'm like, I don't care. More
Westworld
about cowboys.
Westworld series, the first season was fantastic. The second series just got caught up in itself and was so repetitious and dull. I was out
that's
after
the first
like
season
3
for
or
me.
4
I'm like,
episodes.
what's happening besides these robots staring at each other, going, "Are we robots? I don't know." Over and over again.
I never watched.
Season 2 is a lot more navel gazing than that.
All right. Well,
yeah,
I'm probably not going to find out.
I tried because Battlestar Galactica, the reboot, is on Amazon Prime here in Canada now, and I thought, what the hell? It's been a few years. I was sort of like saying maybe I should give this another shot. Got to episode 4 again and said, no, I'm done.
I quote Graham Burke, who's told you numerous times, you don't have to watch things you don't actually like.
Yep.
Yeah,
exactly. And I know for Battlestar, as we've talked about in years past, like you don't tend to like the darker stuff.
No, but you know what? It's I mean, not to bring up bad memories and stuff, but we recently passed the anniversary of 9/11, and the post.
I'm waiting for this segue.
The post like 2002 to 2005, like right until Doctor Who. Actually, Doctor Who sort of like said, let's be happy and fun again and have fun with science fiction. But a lot of the sci-fi like media and stuff like Battlestar Galactica was very grim. Enterprise like went a full-on season-long arc of basically getting back at the space terrorists who like ripped apart Florida. War of the Worlds, I saw a video on that. I never saw the movie, the Tom Cruise one, but it came out in 2005 and like everything's just desaturated and like
it's a very 9/11-y.
It's very, and it's just like it got so great, and then maybe that's what we wanted to feel like back in the day, but like in retrospect, it's a tough watch to watch those.
See, for my money, the worst offender is Man of Steel, where they basically just reenact 9/11.
And that's like from like really 3 years ago. Like that's like we've moved, we have moved on, but
that's more like 5 or 6 years ago. But I was like, I'd been what, I don't know, 10 years at that point, more since 9/11, but I was still like, I'm feeling really uncomfortable watching this.
Yeah.
Back when Battlestar, like I loved the miniseries thing, and back before I was even ever thought they were going to go to series. But when they actually went to series, the first episode 33, I personally thought it was like amongst the best episodes of TV ever produced.
It's a really well-made show.
Yeah. But I also haven't seen it in I don't know, maybe best part of a decade, because Kat and I went through both the original and the reboots of Battlestar maybe 7-8 years ago. So I haven't seen it in quite a long time, so maybe my opinion will have changed. But despite the grimness, that they still got some awesome TV out of that.
I would say everything until the very end is great. The very end rivals Game of Thrones, does not surpass Game of Thrones for okay, that's an ending, I suppose.
Yeah, I've heard about
the last series was a little too hodgepodge. Yeah.
Great battle scenes at the end, though.
Is it? Well, maybe I won't get there one day.
You'll never get there.
I've got Skyrim to play.
Have you ever tried Galactica 1980, Stephen?
No, that's I have thought about it. I've thought about it because
And
I
after
have
that, you could just take a hammer and punch yourself in the face with it.
Well, it's Galactica in 1980. So when it was produced, it was on Sundays, and it aired on Sundays on ABC. And at the time,
Right.
Sundays were
1980.
designated as family programming days. So it had to be by law, basically,
Right.
upbeat and happy and chipper and all this kind of stuff. So I don't know if maybe that's more your speed.
I have a perfect compromise solution here.
All right.
Galactic 1980 is hot garbage. Do not watch it.
It is
Hate
hot
everything,
garbage,
including
yes.
your own life.
All right.
Watch the original Battlestar Galactica, which is very cheeseball 70s, but also has really good ideas and kind of neat stories. And they try really hard. And because we're old, we'll kind of enjoy the cheeseball nonsense 70s grainy filmness of it. So just watch that, have a good time. And actually, there are some good ideas in it.
And watch John Colicos eat all the scenery.
Yes, John Colicos. And the coolest robot who has ever graced a screen, Lucifer.
Lucifer.
Coolest and gayest robot.
Oh, I don't.
He's so
I don't know.
gloriously gay.
This is I've mentioned this many times in this podcast over the years, but I haven't mentioned it recently. But like my main memories of watching Battlestar Galactica
French.
were watching on CBC French.
Yeah, same here.
So I have not seen the proper English version ever. Maybe I'm not too sure. I was as a kid. I was just thinking, "Ooh, space battles! This is for Cylons." The eye going back and forth, and they blow up really good and stuff. And yeah, I'll totally watch that.
Except they used the same blowing up scene 8,000 times.
Yeah.
And when they shared with
Bundle
Buck
at the
Rogers.
beginning of it.
That's what makes it good. They found a good effect and they used it. So
That they did.
yeah, I have to seek that out. I'm pretty sure that's got to be on like one of those sort of like lower
Tubi
tier,
or Boobla or Blurb or Crackle or whatever the hell.
lower tier streaming services.
Argle
Apologies.
Bargle.
Apologies to other streaming services.
Argle
out there.
Bargle's actually a literal shoebox. with like a videotape in it.
To be fair to the original Battlestar, there were some very forward-thinking and progressive ideas, like Cassiopeia being as they called it, a socialator. But basically, she's a sex worker and shown in a positive light.
Interesting. Wow.
Well, and also they this is 1978. Remember, people of color were just pilots, and that was that. They didn't make a big deal out of it. It was just a thing, which obviously they should do anyway. But yeah,
In the original pilot trilogy thing, you got Rick Springfield in there. So I mean, enjoy that. And Ed Begley Jr.
Whoa.
about that.
What? Ed Begley Jr. What?
Yeah, he played Green Bean.
I don't know who Green Bean is, but I
they're
am
terrible names. Awful.
on board with Ed Begley Jr. Wow, I didn't know that. One of the original drummer of Spinal Tap, Ed Begley Jr. I'll have you know. So
Well,
Yep.
yeah, that's exciting. Stumpy peeps. I don't know. What a tangential episode of the podcast here today. Apologies, or you're welcome. I can't tell what we're going with here, but.
Yeah, this is what happens when Doctor Who's not in production.
That's what happens, and when our social calendar, our fiscal year, if you will, revolves around a convention that is not happening next year, we got to have something. I'm sorry, folks. But hey, coming in November as part of the Time Lord the massive, expansive Time Lord Victorious is coming a new 5-part series of 10-minute episodes, animated. It's called Daleks. Yeah, Daleks! Exclamation point. It is a musical.
Daleks!
It is a musical.
It's like this Sega thing.
Musical.
It's like, Daleks!
Yeah.
or elephant from the tall guy.
Wow.
Daleks. Yes, presumably with an exclamation point.
I think a lot. We've really shown our age right there with like Sega Master System commercials and the tall guy. Warren
Warren referred to
Glorious
it
film.
before, but there's it's called High Score, a recent Netflix documentary on the history of video games, and there's a little chunk about more or less whole episode on Sega, and it's
Guys, here, check it.
battle against Nintendo.
Boop, boop, boop.
Here's the thing. They said the magic words, 10-minute episodes. I'll probably watch this because
Yeah.
it's 10 minutes.
Exactly. It features Nicholas Briggs, Joe Sugg, Angelique Mohindra's. Look at she's everywhere. She was in Doctor Who. She was, of course, in Sarah Jane Adventures, and now she's doing this. Anayesha Antoine. So yeah, it's a little thing. It's part of the Time Lord Victorious, and they're all about Daleks, and it's CG and stuff. And there's a trailer for it. You can watch the trailer for it. So it'll come out in November.
Did you want to bring up your frustration with the Time Lord Victorious timeline and the absence of this on there?
I do. So the website, which is great. So the Doctor Who.tv, there's like a thing for Time of Victorious. TLV, if you want to use the short form. And they have a list of all the things, like immersive book, audio, blah, blah, blah. You can explore, and there's a thing now. It says animated series, Daleks, ! But then you click on the timeline, which I also thought was handy because it tells you what order things go in. The graphic hasn't been updated with the Daleks yet. They're not on there. So where does it go? I don't know.
I've given up on trying to figure out any of Time Lord Victorious. I'm just gonna if I see stuff great,
yeah.
I'm not gonna try and figure out where all this fits.
Back in the day,
tricky.
before everything wrapped up for the MCU stuff, Phase 3, whatever you want to call it. Back when they publish timelines of this movie comes in at this point in time, so you got to watch Black Panther before you watch whatever.
Yeah.
I so lost interest in that back then that I have none for
I
Time
didn't find
Lord
it hard to keep
Victorious.
track of, but maybe I sucked up all my keeping track of synapses with that instead of this.
Well, I mean, this is the neat thing about, Time Lord Victorious at least is like standalone things. It's not like an ongoing series. So like, I know that I never watched it, but the one of the complaints about Agents of Steel is that it basically spun its wheels until something happened in a movie so that it could do something in the series.
I heard the later series aren't like that.
Apparently not.
I haven't watched them though, so
no. But so this at least is a comic book thing. It's not like, oh, you have to like be careful. Don't read this. Where nothing's going to happen in this big finish play because we're waiting for something else to happen in a comic book. It's not necessarily like that. Each thing has its own time in the sun. Basically, is what I mean to say. But
that used to frustrate me like crazy in comic books reading a kid. It's like, you'll have to find out what happened in Green Lantern 53. I'm like, no, I don't, editor.
Well, that's how they get you.
Happen.
They entice you. It's like a next time trailer, essentially, right?
Buy our stuff.
Buy our stuff. That's how we have to get through things. That's capitalism, baby. That's capitalism. Anyway, I am looking forward to this because, Daleks are relative. I mean, the great thing about Ray Cusick and Terry Nation designing the Daleks back in the 1960s, I'm sure they saw this day coming, is that they are among the more easier things to animate via computer animation because they
pretty sure they didn't see
have
that
angles. No,
they said, thanks for the paycheck, BBC. I'll be on my way down to the pub.
You got me, Warren. You got me.
Well,
You're right.
Cusick didn't even get a proper paycheck from the BBC for years.
Yeah. Never did. Did he ever get credited?
See what can of worms you
Yeah, he
opened?
did. He got credit in some I don't know, honorarium for pay.
Well, I know. I mean,
years ago.
on screen, because I feel like the modern series has sort of made reparations, if you will, to the Autons created by Robert Holmes, that sort of thing, And I feel like Ray Cusick might have.
I can't remember if Cusick got credited. Nation sure as hell did.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, I bet you it's part of the agreement with the Nation. Nope. Terry Nation, sole creator of the Daleks. R.I.P. Ray Cusick. Did great work on it.
And Terry Nation, for that matter.
Yeah. Speaking of Terry Nation, some of his stories that ostensibly contain his name, even though he did very little on them. I'm bashing Terry Nation now for some reason. On BritBox in the UK, Blake 7 is now available, and soon, also next week, Survivors will be on BritBox in the UK, amongst a whole host of things, including the 2 Dalek movies will be there. Quatermass in the Pit and some other British stuff. I don't think it's coming to North American BritBox yet, which is a shame because I mean, it's Blake 7 has never been released here in VHS or on DVD. I wonder
if that's why it hasn't shown up yet, because there's no rights here or something.
I don't know, but it's all the episodes are on YouTube if you want to look, and all the episodes of Survivors on and somewhat poor quality on YouTube too. I started watching Survivors during the early days of the pandemic, thinking, well,
that's a bad idea.
These people have it even worse than we do, so I can laugh at them. And then like after the first season, like one of the best characters gets fired, and they talk about growing potatoes, and I'm thinking, I think I'm done for now. maybe I'll join back in to see how their potato farm is coming along in season 2. But yeah, it's coming to BritBox, so that's pretty cool. It's good to have Blake 7 be put in the spotlight a bit more, because it only existed on DVD before.
Yeah, because it needs more exposure.
It does. I mean,
it's 40 40 whatever years old, or 40 years or whatever since it kicked off. But it's enjoyable enough. I mean, for anyone who can can manage classic Doctor Who, which isn't everybody.
It's about the same thing, really.
Yeah, it's on par, especially given, as we've talked about ad nauseum in the past, there's a lot of shared writers, directors, actors, sets in some cases.
Oh yeah, music. The music style. Dudley Simpson does it both, of course. Yeah.
So there's a lot of what the things that can help you enjoy classic Doctor Who are there in Blake 7 as well, and it's good. Even what's his face? Rick James.
Rick James, he's in the penultimate episode, Warlord.
As bad a performance as he gives in the Mutants, it's even worse in Blake 7.
Wow. Poor Rick James.
Yeah.
I'm thinking this means war, because we had to throw our national terrible looking sci-fi on CBC Gem, Starlost.
I agree. Well, CBC Gem it didn't air on CBC, but that doesn't stop.
I know, but where else can you put it? We don't have our streaming service really other than Crave.
That's true. The Starlost, God. We should do an episode about that.
That presumes anybody would even think about doing that, which they're not going to.
Yeah, the Starlost. If anybody out there has seen the Starlost, just get in touch with us, because I know we talk about it a lot in this podcast.
Because we're sad old men.
Very, very sad. I look at that show, the Starlost, which is a Harlan Ellison written show, which eventually got whittled down from being like this amazing idea to like a very cheaply made multicam videotape show shot.
Which is what's so great about it.
Yeah, and yet, there are many faults to it. And I look at it going, this could be better if it wasn't like this. And yeah, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. Listen, all videotape drama is not bad, because I watch Doctor Who I love because there's some directorial flair, and the Sandbaggers is amazing. And then you look at the Starlost and you realize these people haven't actually. I think they've directed soap operas and nothing but.
Almost certainly true.
There's no tension in those episodes whatsoever. Actually,
probably wouldn't be soap operas because it would be Canadian directors, so it would probably be like plays of the day kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
10 years earlier.
Yeah, it's just
on radio.
It's not good.
Possibly.
Not good. Speaking of classic TV, UK, enjoy your Fury from the Deep animated version that's out now. Good job on that. It hasn't even come up for pre-order yet here in Canada, so we'll get that in about a year's time. Well done. I have been slowly plowing through season 14, though, which has been great. Sort of throwing them on the second TV as I wander around the Old West and Red Dead Online, and it's pretty neat to watch some season 14 Doctor Who. So I'm up through into past episode 2 of Robots of Death is what I'm up to right now.
Hurrah.
Yep. So
good stuff.
That's fun. Good stuff. Lastly, in this here news list, some sad news. A Dame Diana Rigg, famous for her one and only appearance on Doctor Who.
And nothing else.
Nothing else. Emma Peel, of course, in the Avengers. Elena Tyrell in Game of Thrones. God, she was
brilliant. Possibly the best thing about Game of Thrones.
Possibly the best thing.
She was so funny.
Was the main female lead in one of the greatest James Bond movies ever on Her Majesty's Secret Service. Has passed away at the age of 82. My heavens, what a legendary career! Legendary career. I mean, some people see her as like the person who hosted like Masterpiece Theater for all those years as well. Like she.
Oh, Mystery. She was on Mystery.
Mystery. That was it.
As well.
I know it was a BBS story. I didn't watch the shows, but yeah. Gosh, what a life lived, and very sad, alas. But she was absolutely fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. So our hearts go out to her friends and family, and we thank her for her massive contribution to entertainment over the past 50 years. So, Diana Rigg. That's it. That's it for the news list, everyone. After the very short break, hey, let's talk about some missing episodes with the chaps from the Missing Episodes podcast, Tim and Paul from Doctor Who, the Missing Episodes podcast. One of the more pleasant aspects of life for me during this global pandemic, if it could be called that, has been a new podcast devoted to Doctor Who missing episodes. It's called, somewhat unsurprisingly, Doctor Who, the Missing Episodes podcast. And I'm joined by the two hosts today. Hello, Tim, and hello, Paul.
Hello, Steve. Hello, Tim.
Yeah, it's been like a month and a bit since the last episode of that podcast, and the two hosts have not talked to each other since that last one. So we've all been catching up. Also, little did I know, Tim, until just before we press record on this, that you and I and a couple other people were on like a Missing Episodes Facebook group back in the heady days of 2013. And so this feels like a bit of a reunion in some ways. So this is lovely. It's been a while since I was able to talk about Missing Episodes.
We've sobered up since then, though, haven't we? In an aspirations sort of way.
Yeah, that's the weird thing, isn't it? I mean, well, we'll get into it. I mean, 2013 would have been a perfect time to start up a Missing Episodes podcast, but you waited until April of 2020 to start one. So why did you decide to start one, and why did you start one now?
Back in 2013, I guess most people who were following the rumours, most people on our side of the fence, us laymen, thought it would all be over within the next year or two, didn't we? I don't think, it wasn't particularly the people who were frothing at the mouth who'd really sucked up every last rumour that were thinking that. But I also think some of the people on the inside thought it would all be all over. Nobody really saw it being 7 years later, us being as in the dark as we ever were, or possibly more so. So, we're here to shine a bit of light onto some of the rumours, bring a bit of clarity to the myth.
To coin a phrase, it's far from being all over.
We were going to do another podcast, basically. We had a grandiose, and still have a grandiose podcast project in mind, where we talk about boring stuff like what might have been in the trial of a Time Lord and so on. And we were planning that, and it became so complicated and difficult that we started stalling. And then one day I just said to Paul, shall we just talk about the Missing Episodes? Because that's how we met. We met through a mutual friend in about 2014, Paul, was it?
Correct.
And we are Missing Episodes nuts, and so that's our passion and that's our connection. But we were going to record another podcast, and that stalled. And so we just thought we'd do one about the Missing Episodes. Just me and Paul. Just talking about each story, just for the sake of doing a podcast. And then we thought, we were going to get Greg Backen, who's a huge missing archive TV enthusiast. We were going to get him on for the first episode of our other venture anyway, and we knew he had some connection to the animation of the Reign of Terror. And so we thought, we'll get him on. And then the Crusade would have been next. So me and Paul did Marco Polo, and we had Greg on to talk about the Reign of Terror animation, and the Crusade would have been next. And Paul Scoons, who's a gentleman, he got in touch with us and said, if you're going to be doing a podcast about the Crusade, do you want me to come on and talk about the recovery of the lion? And we thought, yeah, why not? And that really sort of got the momentum going, where we had a real live Missing Episode finder on the podcast, and he talked with such passion and such knowledge about the subject, and Paul and I were on this video call and just smiling throughout as he recounted this story, and it went down very, very well. Even though it's 20 years old, it still felt very fresh, and it was very touching as well. He read out a letter that Alvin Rakoff, Jacqueline Hill's husband, widower, wrote to Neil Lambus, who's the guy who actually found the lion, and said how important it was to him that he had a little bit more of his Jacqueline back, and it was such a powerful story. Anyway, that really got the momentum behind us, and
we also thought, if we just drop back to just being us two idiots now, such a pathetic decline from the sublime to the ridiculous that we wouldn't be able to show our faces in public again. So yes, since then, it's been not only we must carry on having interesting, relevant, informative guests, but how do we keep the standard up? But it kind of made rather a rod for our backs, but we're still enjoying it.
Well, you've done the smart thing of like, choosing Missing Episodes, which means, thankfully, there's a finite number of stories or episodes you could do of the podcast because of stories you could review. Supposedly, I mean, you could talk about the missing stories. I don't know how much past the John Pertwee era you'll be going in this, but do you have sort of like now that you've invited guests on for each podcast, do you have like an expansive view of where the podcast is going to go and how it's going to wrap up?
Well, we're covered up until, in terms of guests, we are booked up until we've got Dalek's master plan in the works, and we're covered in terms of guests up until, I think, either the Highlanders or the Underwater Menace. So we have something. We have asked someone on because they were either very enthusiastic about the story or they've been involved in the recovery. It will go up certainly until the end of the Troughton era. Obviously, I think we'll do one or two. We haven't really discussed this, but we're definitely going to cover Pertwee.
We've already been covering. We've made the decision early on to cover stories that aren't missing now, but were at a certain sort of cut-off point. I guess it may be it might be the 1981 Doctor Who magazine winter special. It might be, or it might be around about that sort of late 70s, early 80s points. Anything that's been recovered since then, which is why we've already done the Time Meddler, which I suppose technically is still missing 13 seconds, but so
it counts.
But the recovery stories are the brilliant stories, aren't they? They're the ones that
very true.
Give hope for other recoveries. As we get on and where there appears no hope, that becomes a different challenge for the podcast.
Yes, it has been two podcasts in one, really. We've had episodes which have told very detailed stories with happy endings of successful recoveries, and then there are the big unknowns. We're getting into Series 3 now, where there are lots and lots and lots of missing stories, often with the same chances, whatever they may be, as each other. They were sold to the same places, the same very few places. So it gives us a chance to go off in a different direction with the podcast and talk about foreign sales, talk about which countries have been investigated and how, what thin possibilities are left.
Yeah, that's the part that I find quite fascinating. I like it when you talk about, like, which copies went to where. I don't know what there's a missing episodes.blogspot.com, I think, is a website that I have bookmarked that sort of has, like, lists off the number of prints. Rich Molesworth book Wiped, which is it's only its second edition. I look forward to a day when it'll be its third edition because it'll have been updated in some way. I mean, So what was it? Was it a natural doing a podcast about missing episodes and not just talking about the episodes, but to actually talk about where they wound up in the world and where they might be found?
I think so. I mean, we talk about that a lot in our private lives because we're absolutely desperately tragic people. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure at the beginning that we were going to mention it that much. There's certainly very little on Marco Polo, and I think. I don't know, was that your idea, Tim, to maybe keep it not too technical, not too detailed, to not scare people off? And then, edition on edition, we've been putting more and more detail in because people do like that, and it just seems...
And then you throw in phrases like stored field and suppressed field, and you go, okay, I think you pretty much throw the cover off being too technically detailed.
We've managed to get stored and suppressed field wrong absolutely every time we've mentioned it, to the point that someone wrote in. Well... Maybe it's just me and Paul, but we it's very gratifying to know that and we very often hear that the last 15, 20 minutes of the podcast where we talk about what sold where is the most hopeful and intriguing bit, and we've had fantastic people retweet us saying, listen to this bit. And it's basically us recounting the very excellent research of others. We heavily rely on a website called broadcast.org.
Yes.
That's BROADW cast.org, and that's run by a couple of chaps, but the main researcher is John Preddle, who appeared on our Time Meddler podcast. And the guy is he's nuts. He travels the world going to libraries to research newspaper listings of TV episodes. And he's mapped all of this work out. He does it out of his own pocket, and he's mapped it all out on this website, and so you can see what was broadcast where. And he then tries to work out, using the information that pretty much we all have access to, plus his own research, what the last resting places were of certain episodes. It's all there. It's a fantastic piece of work that he's done. It's absolutely crazy the amount of detail it goes into. I think Paul and I have spent far too much of our adult lives poring over this stuff, and all we do is basically crib from that. And we've had John on, and you could hear him on our Time Meddler episode. He's absolutely immersed in the movement of film prints, and it's either very, very dull or eerily interesting. I don't know what it is, but before we started trying to establish whether it was possible for a large find of missing episodes to have happened in 2013 or beforehand, I never quite knew or predicted in my life that I would have an intimate working knowledge of Sierra Leone television. And and the floor layout of the studio and where the film storage room was and so on. Mm-hmm. It's just this mystery. It's archaeology, it's history, I don't know quite why it's so intriguing, but Paul and I spend far too much time talking about it, so we thought we better do a podcast about it, I suppose.
And I don't want to sound too pretentious here. I'll probably regret saying this, but I do think we can be of use to some people who have a casual interest in this subject, who may be suffering from, I don't know, overinflated expectations of what is possible. Because a lot of people you see on the Missing Episode forums talking about it are either too optimistic or too negative. I mean, you can't really adjust your expectations correctly if you don't know where things are sold and what's already been ruled out. So it can't hurt to try and spread a little reality. And we're trying to do it without too much emotion. A few bad jokes, but without too much leading the witness, you know?
I know what you mean. I used to work at a TV station, and I was the program services coordinator was my title. And basically, is involving not acquiring the actual shows like the contracts and stuff, but the actual acquiring the actual at the time videotapes, mostly Digibetacam or Betacam SB or something like that. And so I would bring them in, we'd record them, we'd send them back. But in some cases, we would just have them, and I wouldn't know who to send them back to because perhaps a merger had occurred in between us getting it and the tape being, the window being gone, and so we had time to send it back. So I had like a small desk at my desk, which was filled with all these videotapes of places that I didn't know where to send them to because the contacts had gone dry. And I thought, if this can happen in the 21st century, where I have a bunch of videotapes that I don't know what to do with, but they're, I'm not going to throw them away or wipe them or anything out of hand. They're just sitting there, and they probably are still sitting there when I was unceremoniously let go in the late May of 2016. That part, just knowing the sheer incompetence of television gives me hope. Not even as much as bicycle chains. It's stuff not being done properly, which is probably where you find stacks of 12 film cans in a TV station in Jos, Nigeria.
I think that's literally the explanation, because if it had been done properly, there were certain very clear rules that were supposed to be adhered to. They're supposed to be sent back to the BBC or destroyed. Mm-hmm. So if anything is still existing extant, something specific went wrong in that particular location. Yeah. But it's very difficult to find out, isn't it? I mean, even with Enemy of the World and Web of Fear found in Jos, we don't know for sure why they were there. We don't know for sure they were broadcast. Is that true?
Mm-hmm. Were they broadcast from Jos, and did they come from Singapore? I think that was the prevail, or Hong Kong was it? Where was the origin of those two?
It was definitely Hong Kong, Singapore. Phil announced out of nowhere a few years back that they'd also gone through Gibraltar and then Zambia before arriving in Nigeria. Now, he hasn't produced any evidence for this, which would be handy for all the people, the few other people who are trying to do diligent research into this.
But you see, on the Enemy of the World Special Edition, you saw some photographs from Phil's phone where the room in which these film cans were found it's almost, I hate to say the word, but it's almost literally the Indiana Jones type stuff. This is a room that looks like it looks like the control room of the city of Exelon, where you've just kicked the door open for the first time in decades.
Right.
And it is as was when that room was closed up. And it's a time capsule of whatever happened, be it the merger of the Nigerian TV stations or whatever happened back in the 1970s, to make sure that nothing left that room.
Mm-hmm.
And so from that perspective, it's hard to see it happening somewhere else. But on the other hand, it's happened in Jos, Nigeria, so might it have happened in, I don't know, Ethiopia?
As you say, it's difficult to imagine those precise circumstances happening elsewhere. There are particular circumstances for everything that's been found. Tomb of the Sidemen in Hong Kong, an absolute one-off that didn't appear to make any sense at the time, while they still had this one story. Through a lot of diligent research, I think it's John, isn't it, who's worked out what happened. It was almost certainly...
He's calculated that it was accidentally sent on to Singapore, who rapidly sent it back. And therefore, it remained in the Hong Kong archives. Isn't that remarkable?
Just to reiterate, it's if the correct procedures were followed, these things are gone. If they weren't, well, there are a million different ways of cocking something up. So that's what we want. We want all of these little blank spaces in the back of Wiped, Volume 2, for countries that haven't yet been checked and ruled out. We want there to have been a particular unique cock-up in each one of them.
Yeah, I suppose this is what makes it frustrating, is that you could trust all you like to John's excellent word on broadcast with the bicycling chains and the broadcast dates and sort of piecing together things. But that, what is it now? I'm not looking at my notes or anything like that. But the Ethiopia seems to be like the last known broadcast date, or for like most of the stories up and through till the chase, I think, isn't it, like early 1970s, and then they just sort of disappear at that point. And or am I getting my bicycling chains mixed up here?
I think that's right. Is it? Did they buy the whole of the first 2 seasons in 1971? That's the last sale of those stories. There were rumours once upon a time that Marco Polo may have been found.
I never heard of these.
No.
It's the first time I'm hearing that Marco Polo.
Well, they didn't really gain much traction. But,
no.
I mean, the rumours never stated where these things are supposed to have been found, depending on what the source of the rumours were. If you believe that they actually came from a legitimate source rather than just being invented out of whole cloth. There aren't that many options, and Ethiopia looks like the most obvious because it hasn't been checked, except it has been checked. Because we've been told specifically by Phil Morris. He's told us in vague terms that he's been to every single country where Doctor Who was sold. He's told us specifically that he's been to Ethiopia. He's even gone into some detail about his first visit there when he couldn't get in because they took one look at him. No, to be fair, it was an anecdote about how in the early days of his operation, he had no credentials, no calling card, so he couldn't get in anywhere. But he has told us that he went back to Ethiopia again and ... I think he implies he was let in the second time. He has not gone so far as to tell us what he found or didn't find when he went there, which must surely be at least 7 or 8 years ago by now. So, it's a conspicuous lacuna in his accounting.
So you're saying on this podcast... Paul Morris, which I'm sure your last name is not a coincidence in this matter.
You've never seen us together.
That he has found absolutely everything in Ethiopia and just isn't saying that. Confirm or deny?
Oh, I read that in the Sunday Mirror. And well, it's helpful that the newspapers, when they report these rumours, get it so completely wrong that it's very easy to deny their reports because they're ludicrous. For some reason, it was reported that he'd found everything in Ethiopia, which is not possible. There are just over 2 handsful of episodes that could be there. It's just one example.
On the topic of mainstream news coverage like that, I mean, Paul Vanessis was on this show a couple of years ago and mentioned that that 2 episodes exist in the hands of collectors that he knew of. That got spread like wildfire and made the news in the newspapers and probably misquoted him and stuff. And then you get all the episodes are actually in Ethiopia. How is it dangerous to have for the whole initiative of trying to find missing episodes when the only time a lot of people who aren't like us hear about it are when they open up, like the Daily Mirror, and oh look, it looks like they found all the missing episodes, and they're in Ethiopia. I mean, this sort of widespread misinformation, is it damaging to the cause of finding more missing episodes, do you think?
I think it's all good. I think any publicity is good. I think anyone, the sort of public, I don't know why, but particularly the national media in Britain latches onto these stories because I think they're easy news fodder, but also I think they're very popular because people like to hear about the reclamation of things from oblivion. If that's not too deep, but I think it's all good. I think if it jogs a memory and someone realizes they've got an audio recording in the loft from the Beatles on Jukebox Jury or whatever back in the 60s, or perchance a tele-recording if they've got something from a deceased relative, I think it's all good. I think any publicity on it can only be a positive thing, and the people involved in searching know what they're doing to a degree. I mean, I don't think Paul Vanezis could have banked on appearing on Radio Free Skaro and mentioning 2 episodes and then having television producer says all 97 missing episodes have been found or whatever happened in the Daily Mirror. But I think any publicity about the missing episode situation can only be good, because that will cause people to look and think and jog their memories, and the only harm that could come is when you get people immersed in it who then decide to try and run interference in the process of what Phil Morris is up to, and so on and so forth.
Which happened a lot back in the day. It's difficult
It did.
to see how it could happen now, because we have no idea what he's up to. But people were contacting foreign stations, which is exactly what they didn't want to happen, which is why his search was under the radar for so many years.
I mean, that's what Ian Levine did back in the 80s. The original missing episode hunter, if you will.
Well, that's been a fascinating dilemma that's come out of the podcast, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
The question, what Ian Levine did in the 1980s with his photographic memory and so on, is contact superficially TV stations, and especially in Nigeria, and he instigated the return of the Time Meddler and
War Machines.
The War Machines, thank you. But when you hear John Predel talking about it, and he's quite right, had a more thorough investigation happened, prompted by, oh my goodness, Nigeria has 8 episodes, had a more thorough investigation happened at that point, we might have had the entire seasons 1 and 2 and whatever happened from season 5, whatever was broadcast from season 5 at that point. So it's a really difficult matter to weigh up, isn't it? Ian Levine was the first into the breach. He made the initial inquiries and got back 8 episodes, and all credit to him. But hindsight is always 20/20, and had a more thorough investigation happened, and I'm not blaming Ian at all, but it just would have been lovely if it had happened. We would have had a whole lot more, including Marco Polo, the Reign of Terror, the Crusade, and who knows what else from the Troughton era. So it's a really frustrating, interesting situation we have there with Nigeria. But we haven't had the complete story told yet, and whether anything else has been found there. But I find it really interesting, the conflict between what happened in the 80s and what we got then, and was it a good thing?
Because I don't think the BBC was in the mind to search.
Absolutely not.
They did their initial audit in the late 70s. And it was basically up to, well, if we find some now, I guess it's like, they're all basically by mistake, car boot sales, Mormon churches, everything else, so if it wasn't Ian Levine in 1984, I don't think anybody would have done it. We've never, it's easy to sort of say, wow, there could have been other stuff there. We could dream about a proper search happening in 1984, but especially given what the BBC thought of Doctor Who at the time,
No,
they
you're
probably weren't going to
right.
bend over backwards to find it.
You're absolutely right, but it ain't half frustrating that when you hear that Nigeria junked seasons 1 and 2 in the 90s, when they rang the BBC and said, "Would you like these episodes back?" And whoever's desk it ended up on saying, "No, they're all out on DVD. Don't worry about it." And they junked them. And if we if we go a few thousand or 100 miles west, Sierra Leone was also possibly sitting on the lion's share of season 3 into the 1990s, although there's some debate as to whether they still had them at that point. But in an alternate universe, in the Inferno universe,
right.
I'll take it.
Where free will is an illusion, but alas, missing episodes are not. They all exist.
That's absolutely right. Now, that's a tough choice.
Yeah. Free will or the opportunity to watch The Underwater Menace with the proper 4-episode recons.
But it's a particularly fascinating area, and all these what-ifs and what could have beens is what fuels our interest and maintains our interest.
Mm-hmm. I think you mentioned before, it's like there's an archaeological element to missing episodes. You know, we're recording this on Star Trek Day, for what it's worth, September 8th. And, you know, I can't tell if Star Trek fans are lucky that they have everything that is in existence, has happened in the Star Trek universe that actually exists, even their pilot episode, or if they're unlucky because they don't have this mystique around episodes that are no longer there and the hunt for them. In some way, yes, I wish I could see them all, but in a way, I hope that we can see them all after they've been hunted down, because it's all kind of a romantic aspect to Doctor Who fandom that
it is.
I don't think other franchises get to appreciate.
Well, like the Doctor once said, some things could be better with the Daleks. It's produced a lot of creativity from the people remastering the soundtracks, the animations, the recons. Actually, just those.
Just that, nothing else. Well, what are the? I suppose, turning away from Phil Morris, and perhaps that's not a bad thing given his social media persona these days. Is that private collectors seem to be a thing? It was Phil Morris who said. I mean, Paul Vanessa said there are 2 episodes that he knows that are in the hands of private collectors. Phil went on to say there are 6. I don't know if that's in addition to the 2, probably not, probably 6 total. I mean, now it seems that private collectors with all their old film can collections are now the new hope, I suppose, for finding missing episodes. I don't know. What are your 2 see when it comes to that? Yeah,
they might be the new hope. In terms of what Phil said over the years, and I'm going to come back to private collectors. He initially went to every country where Doctor Who was sold, found what he found, didn't find what he didn't find. Then he moved on to audition prints, and for a few years immediately after the search, he was saying audition prints were his focus, which basically is saying countries where Doctor Who wasn't sold, but where it was auditioned. As we've heard nothing out of that, so draw your own conclusions. And then he moved on to private collectors. Whether or not his focus really has shifted along that path in that same timescale, who knows? Tim is right to say that all publicity is good publicity. Getting the idea that there is missing television out there to the public, who probably, just like that BBC temp answering the phone from Nigeria, who probably think it all exists somewhere in a dusty cupboard, and that the reason they haven't seen it is just because there's so much. They haven't. Why would they have seen it? 99% of the television it's ever made. You haven't got enough hours in the day. I don't realise it doesn't exist. But has anything ever come forward? Has any random member of the public who became aware from one of these news articles ever said, "Oh, hang on, my granddad's got such and such in his shed"? I don't think they ever have, which makes me think that whatever is left is in the hands of private collectors who know what they've got.
There's Francis Watson.
When I say they know what they've got, I don't mean in a sinister, I know I have this episode that nobody else has. But they know they have a collection of films, and for whatever reason, they've either not inventoried it or they haven't cross-referenced what they know they have against what the rest of the world has, because that's not what private collectors care about. I know people who aren't keen on private collectors often justify their antipathy by assuming that they know that it's the uniqueness, having something, the edge that they think they have, and they want to gloat over other collectors, is the thrill. But I'm not sure. based on absolutely nothing, because I don't know any of them. I don't think you need to think that. I think collectors just like owning. They're just hoarders, acquisitive types. I speak from experience. I've got far too much stuff in my house. I just like collecting. My collections aren't based on me being better than somebody else. Although, Tim, with your collection of Target books, I think was different. You genuinely just wanted to be the best, didn't you?
But doesn't that speak to the missing episodes itself? And that I think Doctor Who fans, a lot of us are collecting types, and therefore we want to own every episode that's been in this mammoth 50-year run of episodes, and that's what compels us into talking about missing episodes and hoping that they'll come back, in that we long for completion.
So where do you stand on the private collectors? I think it makes sense that it is known that after all these years, all these decades, because these people must have, again, this may be a hell of an assumption, but I'm assuming they're all getting on in years now. I don't think there are many new people becoming private collectors. I don't think it's a young man's game anymore. I think these the prints can and do change hands, but I just get this feeling that perhaps a bit like the decline of the bicycling system in Africa in the 70s or into the early 80s, perhaps the churn in the private collecting circles has dropped off. That eternal game of pass the parcel has ended, and I think now it makes sense that people like Paul Venezis and Ralph Montague, Lord Bewley, who hang around in private collecting circles, it makes sense that they now know what these people have. Perhaps they've loosened up over the years, perhaps with the threat of Bob Monkhouse having... Do I need to explain that one?
Yeah, please do, yeah.
Private collectors, one of the reasons they were so secretive was because of a specific, genuine fear that they would have their collections raided and destroyed by Her Majesty's Constabulary, by the police, because it happened to a well-known British comedian who's also a film collector, Bob Monkhouse. He had an enormous collection, including some very rare material, and based on some sort of tip-off, the police grabbed most of it, and he had fought a long court battle to prove that he had the right to own these prints, that he wasn't breaking any copyright laws just by owning the prints. And I think it set some sort of precedent in law. But he didn't get it all back because the police were rather irritated. They haven't been foiled and burnt some of it, I think. It's a continuing theme in the history of missing film and television. So yeah, a lot of this reverberated through the private collector community, and a lot of them battened down the hatches and became very secretive for decades afterwards. They had long memories. And maybe that's another thing that's starting to fade. So perhaps when Phil and Paul feel they can tell us that they know of private collectors with specific missing television and specific Doctor Who episodes, perhaps it's because they think there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Tim, you have thoughts on the private collector angle?
I think it's quite a delicate balance, isn't it, between what have you got to lose with publicising the thought that there might be something in the attic and emboldening these collectors, because nobody is immortal, and there is a danger that anyone who owns a substantial collection of 16mm film, or any collection of film at all, is going to be of a certain age, and it only has value to those that are interested in it. So I think there's a real danger at this time of estates being disposed of when these collectors fall off the perch. So it's a really interesting, fine balance. Like Paul says, there is a history of things being lost along the way in the search for these lost things. And I think we're at another moment now where collections are just going to be junked because it's a load of old film in the attic. So I don't know quite what the balance is between upsetting someone and encouraging someone. It's a really fine issue, isn't it?
Of having Doctor Who restoration team metaphorical vultures hovering around someone's missing episode stash, just in case, like, all the best, long life and all that. But the second that it happens, just make sure that you know where these things are going. But there might be some interventions going on. So as you plan for the afterlife, what are you going to do with the large collection?
Yeah, would you care to sign here? I mean, it's terrible, isn't it? I don't think it's. I don't wish to be controversial, but I don't think it's particularly helpful to be told that I know that X number of episodes sit in private hands. Well, good for you, mate. I mean, I just don't think it's particularly helpful because there's no guarantee that they'll end up on our shelves. Mm-hmm. It's a really difficult situation. I think it's one where I'd rather be ignorant, to be honest.
By a way of sort of drawing this to a close, and also talking about a fascinating story for me, and plugging what will eventually be the next episode of your podcast. The Daleks Master Plan has always been a curious devil, being the fact that 3 episodes do exist, and even though it was never broadcast anywhere apart from the UK, only sold to Australia, rejected there, presumably sent back, who knows. You've already recorded. You're devoting 2 episodes of the podcast to this mammoth story. I won't ask you to reveal any details of the podcast, but I do know that I am looking forward to it. So, does the Daleks Master Plan fascinate you two as much as it does me?
Yes,
it should have been 4 episodes devoted to the Daleks Master Plan. Oh my lord! Yes, it does. Well, I'll speak first. I mean, it is a story that has so many visual elements that you just need to be able to see to think, how the heck did they do that? There's the very famous Katerina death scene, but there's also there's the episode 12. Everybody wants to see the literal destruction of time as Sarah ages to death and so on. But there's also so many little bits that are required viewing and suffer because we can't see the visuals. Just little bits like, I don't know, I think a Dalek falls into a swamp at some point. I really want to see what that looks like. I want to see what the Doctor in episode 8, I think it is, Volcano, fiddles around with the monk's TARDIS and turns it into various different shapes. I want to see how that happens. We've got the first of 2 parts coming up with Gav Rymil, who is one half of the Dalek 6388 partnership and produces those ridiculously oversubscribed videos on YouTube. And he lends that same forensic eye to some script detail, which is absolutely fascinating. And he throws more light onto what we can't see in terms of how they realise certain things. So yeah, absolutely, it's such a visual story, isn't it, that I'd absolutely love to see how they achieve things.
Of course, the one episode that would benefit most from actually being able to be seen is The Feast of Stephen. Even though it's rubbish, It would actually make some sort of sense if you could see it. But we never will be able to, and nobody would choose that one if you're offered one. So I don't know why I mentioned it.
I might, just to upset you.
I'm fascinated by what happened behind the scene for William Hartnell to be written out mostly from episodes 11 and 12. I love that still isn't a for sure thing as to why that happened. Was this where William Hartnell had a famous row with his makeup person about the wig and walked off? Like, was it connected to that? Was it earlier in the story? I mean, he's obviously there during the first part of that story to record a scene, so he's not like away sick or something like that. It's the unknown of that story, and the fact that Douglas Camfield is such a brilliant and visual director. The episodes that we do have, I think, are just a notch above everything else that exists around that same period of time. It's the most fascinating time in Doctor Who history for me, the John Wiles era, and the fact that he didn't commission any telesnaps and that so little actual moving footage exists is just this. It's like a missing era of like archaeology that I need to see. So
rest assured that with that episode 11 mystery about why Hartnell doesn't appear, we approach that problem with a great gusto. We approach the hurdle with great velocity. I'm not sure we completely leap the hurdle, but yeah, it's a real intrigue. And indeed, season 3 is a fascinating era of the show, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Everything is new, everything is experimental, little of it exists. They go from great high-minded comedy to tragedy to massacres, and so on. It's
the biggest space opera we ever have, I think.
Indeed.
Any version of the program. Although, having said that, wasn't actually John Wilde's choice, of course. We go into that, don't we? But one of the things that's most unusual about Dalek's Master Plan is he didn't want to do it. So there's that tension between a Terry Nation script that's very heavily from his version of seasons 1 and 2 style Doctor Who, with Wiles and Tosh pulling it in a different direction, desperately throwing spanners into the works to try and turn it into something much darker. No, it's held a great fascination for me, that story, ever since I first saw it just listed in the Doctor Who program guide. And then at the Mythmakers, we've already covered that. We all, I think we've converted a new new generation of fans to the joys of the Mythmakers, haven't we, single-handedly? Or rather, Toby did, because they believed him.
Well, that's part of the mission, isn't it? And the missing stories are neglected. And I find them utterly fascinating because I'm desperately keen to see them, as are so many other people, and people come up with so many creative and different ways of bringing them to life that we are missing some of the best and vital bits of those first 6 years. And the Mythmakers is an absolutely prime example of that. It's one of my absolute favourites, but in terms of top 10s or top 5 missing stories desired to be returned, it never features. But I think we're all great fans, and the number of converts we've had from episode 7 alone has been remarkable. People have been buying the audiobooks and the target books and so on and so forth, and that's quite an achievement for a little podcast. I mean, a little niche podcast. I'm very proud of that alone.
And coming up after that is another popular one, the Massacre. But I've no idea who we're going to get to talk about that. It's
I don't know who would be on that one. Which person you've roped into trying to just memorize James Corey Smith's excellent book about it.
Well, there's an idea. Maybe we don't need a guest.
Luck.
We could just
just read the book. Just read the book. It's a fabulous podcast, chaps. I dove in. I can't remember which episode it was, then have been back populating up until then. So and I eagerly await the next one whenever that may come down the pipeline. But it's tremendous work. You can obviously tell that the passion is there from the both of you, but also the desire to learn and educate about these long lost stories and how they are vital to the history of Doctor Who. So well done to you both.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephen. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Tim and Paul. I'm still waiting around. I know they tweeted out like a couple days ago that their Dalek's Master Plan episodes have sort of like hit a thing because they've got like 2 of them planned. The first one with Gav Rymel from Terry Nation Army, which I'm desperate to hear. Because I love everything about the Dalek's Master Plan, as I just said there in the interview. But and then they're waiting for a second episode to sort of come through. And it's very interesting stuff. I like hearing deep dives into specific topics when it comes to podcast stuff. So, yeah, it's a good show. It's a good show, everyone. Links in the show notes if you want to check it out yourself. Next week, hey, we're back to Miniscopes for the final time for the next probably the calendar year, basically, let's face it. But hey, boy, what a way to ring out the Miniscope New Year, so to speak. Wayne Yip, director Wayne Yip, is on in the Miniscope with his 3 episodes of Doctor Who. Oddly enough, Erica has been watching a show called Imposters, which ran on Bravo, but it's on Netflix right now. And she was watching an episode, and look who pops up in the director's name. It's Wayne Yip, so he directed an episode of that. And there was some really cool stuff in that episode, because once we saw his name come up, we said, oh, let's see what's going on. And they used a bunch of like split screen stuff and like sort of heisty movie kind of things. It was pretty cool. So Wayne Yip continues to do amazing stuff.
He also did some Doom Patrol as well for those watching that. So
I wasn't watching that, but I bet you it was probably good. Probably well directed.
Doom Patrol is a fun show in general.
Is it now?
So I've been told.
Well, is it as good as The Star Lost?
I have not watched The Star Lost to know.
Well, I don't think you have the authority to comment then. So Take that for what it is. Anyway, next week, Wayne Yip Miniscope, everyone, as we rattle on to the end of September and whatever excitement that may bring. Until next time, I am Stephen in Edmonton.
We're in Vancouver.
And Chris in Edmonton.
So long for now.
You've been listening to Radio Free Skaro. Find us online at radiofreeskaro.com, follow us on Twitter and Tumblr at Radio Free Skaro, subscribe to us on iTunes, and donate to the show at patreon.com/Radio Free Skaro. Thank you.